Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the webinar today, Clinical Trial Transparency in the UK, What is Changing and Why it Matters. My name is Shalini. I lead Clinical Trial Transparency and Regulatory Medical Writing at Chrysalis. Um, Let me introduce this webinar a little bit to you before we introduce you to our guest speakers today. So a recent report by Association of British Pharmaceutical Industries, which has been recently published, it indicated that UK remains in the top 10 countries if we consider all trials that have been started in 2024, which shows that MHRA and HRA, they are making efforts, and these efforts are underway to make things even better. So today in this webinar, we will be discussing very focused. We will be discussing things very focused to clinical trial transparency domain and the new clinical trial regulation that HRA has released in April 2025, which would be effective in April 2026. Let me share my screen to introduce you to our speakers today. Although they do not need any they do not need any introductions because they are very well known in the industry. So our first speaker today is Till Bruckner. So Till is a postdoctoral research fellow at Karolinska Institute in Sweden and the founder of TransparyMed, a Consilium scientific a partner campaign that works to end evidence distortion in medicine. Over nearly a decade, TransparyMed has successfully driven improvements in clinical trial reporting in the UK, European Union, and United States through research and analysis, coalition building, political advocacy, and public pressure. Till previously worked with the Quest Center for Responsible Research, the All Trial Campaign, and anti-corruption group Transparency International, and the International Development Organizations. He holds a PhD in politics from the University of Bristol, UK. Our second speaker today is Andrew Freeman. Andrew is the non-executive chair of ISR-CTN, UK's Clinical Study Registry, and a senior advisor on standards for the Clinical Research Data Sharing Alliance. Andrew is also a co-founder of Ormiston House Consulting, providing consulting and writing services to the healthcare industry. Andrew was previously head of medical policy at GlaxoSmithKline and led the company's clinical study disclosure initiatives to share patient-level data from clinical trials for further research. He had the responsibility for developing corporate medical policies, including those on clinical research, compassionate use, pharmacovigilance, scientific engagement, and promotional practices. So over to you, Till. Floor is all yours.
Yes, Shalini, you're currently sharing your screen, so can you stop doing that, please, and then I can share mine?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, does this work?
Yes.
Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, my name is Till Bruckner and I run the TransparyMed campaign, and I'm just going to give a really quick overview of where the UK stands in the global context. So worldwide, we know that around 47% of clinical trial results are unreported. According to a recent study, the study mixes apples and pears. It's not a very precise and reliable estimate, but I think as a ballpoint figure, it's broadly accurate. When we look at the global clinical trial registry infrastructure, what we see is like a very, very mixed bag. So we've got clinicaltrials.gov, which has got a well-deserved reputation for being an excellent registry. But from a UK perspective, there are three problems with using clinicaltrials.gov. The first one is that if you submit the results of a clinical trial to clinicaltrials.gov that is not covered by the FDA, so by US regulation, there can be very long delays until the PRS team at clinicaltrials.gov looks at the results and approves them. So we're talking about delays of 6 months up. The second problem is that the US government, I think we can agree, is no longer a reliable actor. So you have things like government shutdowns, and at some point, the America First crowd might discover that actually providing a free public service to all these foreigners, letting them register and report their trials on a US government website, and they might close that down. And the third one is I've heard back from some trial sponsors in Germany that clinicaltrials.gov, this has been going on for a while. The PRS team has sometimes told them, please don't register your trial here because you've already got a registry in your own country, DRKS, so please register in your own country. So to sum up, there are delays there, and there are also potential hazards in terms of continued access and availability. Then you've got an assortment of other registries. One that's pretty notorious is the Chinese Clinical Trial Registry, which has got severe limitations on functionality. So, for example, you can't just download the entire data set. And then you have the bottom feeders like the Iranian Clinical Trial Registry, which went offline weeks ago without explanation. And you just can't access it now. I've got no idea what's happening there. This mixed bag of registries then feeds into the ICTRP global database, which is underwhelming. And if any of you on this call know of a commercial provider who provides sort of ICTRP equivalent data, but in a less messy format, please put that in the chat because I'd really like to know. In the European Union, the legal framework is pretty clear now. So for drug trials, you have to report the results. The enforcement lies with national regulators. Some national regulators have said that they will enforce. One has said that they won't enforce. We'll see how that plays out. For medical device trials, again, there's a legal requirement through the EUDAMED registry. There's absolutely no indication how enforcement will look there. And for all other trials, there's no legal requirement and hence also no enforcement. So if we're looking at the UK now, the new clinical trial regulation has come into force on the 28th of April next year. They only apply to clinical trials of investigative medicinal products, so only to drug trials. If you do not comply with those rules, it may result in action being taken by the MHRA, by the UK regulator. Having been in contact with the UK regulator for many years, I'm pretty confident that they will take action. So please follow the law, otherwise you will be facing a fine. So I just wanted to talk through a couple of case studies of sort of efforts to improve clinical trial transparency and how they went well or didn't go well. So when the European Union originally brought in non-binding guidance in 2014 saying from now on, report your clinical trial results on the EudraCT registry. And if we fast forward 10 years after that, there were about 3,000 trial results missing. And what went wrong there is really simple. The people in Brussels just put out a statement basically on their website, and that was it. So they didn't communicate effectively with sponsors. So most sponsors in the non-commercial area especially didn't know that there even was a requirement. And also the database was incredibly difficult to navigate. It wasn't user-friendly. There was no help and support function provided by EMA. And then the Medicines Agency eventually woke up to the problem, and they did some very simple things like sending out email reminders, putting up a help desk. And you can see here that over all countries in the space of 18 months, reporting increased significantly, but the countries where it increased most dramatically, like Germany, Austria, Denmark, and Belgium, those were the ones where the national regulators additionally put huge effort into communicating with sponsors and also supporting sponsors. Second case study is the United States, where you have the Food and Drug Amendments Act adopted in 2008. It took them nearly 10 years to write the final rule, and in 2024, about 4,000 results were still missing there. The key problem there was that the FDA wasn't actually enforcing the law. And the reason it wasn't enforcing it is because the legislation is so badly written that you can't look at the registry and determine 100% whether a trial falls under the law or not. So the FDA can't simply pull out those around 4,000 results and send out warning letters. They have to dig into the trial records for every single trial to see whether this is subject to law. So now they are sending out warning letters very slowly. Compliance has improved significantly, but it's a badly designed system. Case study number 3 is the UK, where there was a public outcry over unreported trial results, and the ethics regulator, the Health Research Authority, adopted the National Make It Public campaign or strategy, and they went completely with the flow of how you would usually do a clinical trial and get it approved. So for you as an investigator, as a sponsor, nothing would really change, except that they would archive all ethics approvals from across the country centrally, and then they were going to check the records afterwards. Were the trials registered? Were the results reported? And this was a brilliant design for an absolutely watertight system. The problem is that they didn't fully implement this. So the HRA now does check proactively whether clinical trials were registered, but they still don't register. They still don't check whether results were reported. And if you look at their registry data, it's pretty impressive. HRA thinks that 92% of clinical trials that got ethics approval were registered. I think the actual figure is even higher. I'm currently doing a study on that, and that should be published next year. And then final case study, and this is an encouraging one. It's like when the European Union set up the new CITES clinical trial registry, they put a huge amount of effort into communicating with sponsors, putting handbooks online, having help desks, putting training resources into that. I'm doing a study on reporting on CITES right now. I don't have the headline data yet, but from looking at it, it looks like compliance is much better. But if you look at the quality of the results uploaded, because there's no fixed format, there are in some cases huge problems, usually from non-commercial sponsors, but from some commercial sponsors as well. To those of you who've been involved in doing lay summaries for large pharma companies, I just wanted to say a warm thank you, because it's absolutely amazing the quality of some of them that I've seen online. So the lessons that I'm sort of drawing from this is that we often talk about laws, and then we talk about the sort of rules and regulations that follow from those laws, but we spend far too little attention on systems and the actual implementation. And that's usually where the problems are, and that's what makes the difference between a transparency ecosystem being functional or not being functional. So just as a final request, if you come across problems with registering or reporting trials in the UK, please do tell the HRA, please do tell ISRCTN, please do tell MHRA, because in my experience, all these actors are really committed to making it as user-friendly and easy as possible. And they really are listening, and you help them when you talk with them about your problems to improve the system for everyone. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Till. And so those who have any questions for Till, please keep adding in the question and answer or in the chat field. So please add your questions. We will be taking up these questions in the end. And you can take up the stage now.
Can you see that? Is that successful? Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, visible.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this webinar. I'm Andrew Freeman. I chair the not-for-profit ISRCTN company that oversees the UK's WHO clinical trial registry of the same name, ISRCTN. So I kind of want to take a step back for a moment and think about why we are registering studies in the first place. You know, what's the point? What are we trying to achieve? And at its core, study registration is about addressing the significant problem of selective reporting and publication bias, where some studies are published, yet others don't see the light of day. And so we end up with a distorted evidence base. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the scientific process, where new research builds on previous research, can't be relied upon. And in the worst case, research is unnecessarily duplicated, putting participants through unnecessary risks. And it also means that recommendations and decisions about medical treatments are not based on all the evidence, which of course can negatively impact patient care. Now, the solution is actually very simple. You know, register every study in a public database at or before the study starts, include enough information such as the primary and secondary outcome measures so the reporting of the results can't be manipulated after the fact, and publish all the results, make all results publicly available, not just the favourable ones. And of course, you know, study registration has got other important benefits. It provides opportunities for patients to find studies that they may be able to participate in, which actually was the original aim of clinicaltrials.gov for serious and life-threatening diseases and conditions. But more than that, registration really provides a great opportunity to engage patients and the broader community with the research process and with research studies. Now, you know, the scientific community has been building this on this for 2 decades. You know, the journal editors made trial registration a condition of publication back in 2004. 2017, the largest medical research funders collectively agreed that every trial they fund must be registered and results publicly disclosed. Declaration of Helsinki, you know, a foundational ethical document for medical research, explicitly requires registration before the first participant is recruited and mandates that researchers publicly disclose their results. Why? Because patients participate in studies and allow their data to be used on the basis that their information will be used to advance scientific understanding and patient care. You know, this is a core ethical requirement. Registration and publication meets that requirement. And at the bottom of this slide, WHO, World Health Organization, has been championing registry standards since 2005, detailing the 22 data elements required for effective study registration. So, you know, the ethical case is clear, the scientific case is clear, the funding landscape demands it, and the publishing world expects it. And yet, despite all this, studies still go unregistered, results, importantly, still go unreported, as Till alluded to. Now, this slide is a BBC report of a UK House of Commons Science and Technology Committee report in 2018, which said that nearly half of clinical trials go unreported. So just think about that, you know, half the studies and the impact of that on future research, on treatment decisions, on respecting patients. You know, clearly this non-legal route hasn't worked or hasn't worked effectively. So it's hardly surprising that through the UK's new clinical trial regulations, the study registration and results disclosure has been made a legal requirement. We've moved from expectation to obligation. And importantly, it's now not just about posting a protocol summary, you are required to follow up and also provide a results summary. And this makes a lot of sense. Studies may be rejected by journals and many publications remain behind a paywall. So providing summary results on registries ensures that all study results are available and publicly accessible free of charge. The World Health Organization has also recognized the need for registries to include summary results and issued clear standards for what registries should capture and how results should be reported. ISRCTN is a WHO primary registry, and we're working very hard to meet these standards for posting results. So which registry should you use? The Health Research Authority, HRA, has issued guidance around this. First of all, they're very clear that registering with the EU Clinical Trials Information System, CTIS, does not satisfy the UK registration requirement. And secondly, unless there's a specific US FDA requirement, sponsors should register with ISRCTN. So for studies without US obligations, ISRCTN is the recommended option. So why has HRA made ISRCTN the recommended option? There are a number of reasons that are summarized on this slide, and I just want to pick out two of those. As Till said, clinicaltrials.gov is an excellent registry, don't get me wrong, but it's not set up to meet timelines in the UK regulations. If you submit a results summary to clinicaltrials.gov, it may well be published in time to meet UK regulations and everything is good, but it might not be. Understandably, clinicaltrials.gov prioritizes studies that come under US regulations, so your UK study may not be processed in time. So the bottom line there is if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, you carry more risk of not being compliant. The other reason I want to emphasize, as is on this slide, is the ability to engage patients. As I said earlier, registration provides great opportunities to engage patients and the broader community. On ISRCTN, unlike clinicaltrials.gov, you can post plain language summaries to do just that. Now, we know registration can feel like a burden, forms can be long, requirements might not be clear, systems might be a bit clunky. And we believe registries can play a crucial role in study transparency by making study registration and result posting as easy as possible. And this is a fundamental pillar of the ISRCTN strategy. And this is not just a statement on a strategy slide. A tangible demonstration of our strategy is our recent launch of a completely streamlined registration form. We went through every field, every question, and asked, is this essential? Is it a WHO requirement? Does it add value? So we cut out the noise from the form, we simplified the form to make it easier for you to register your studies. What about result summaries? Providing results is far more complicated than posting result summaries. Those of you who have used clinicaltrials.gov will know that. Currently, we're developing our results system and we're building a number of things into that system to help you. I just want to show you two of those. The first is that we are providing the option to post a plain language summary of the results. You will have seen that the new UK regulation requires sponsors to offer all relevant persons a summary of the results written in a manner that is understandable to laypersons, I think is the language it uses. So posting a plain language summary to ISRCTN and then providing a link is potentially one way you may be able to meet that requirement. The other aspect I wanted to highlight to you is that we're building in flexibility into the result system. You'll be able to complete online tables or upload PDF tables of your results. And there are a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, we don't believe we can realistically design online tables that accommodate every study design out there. And of course, study designs are evolving and becoming more innovative day by day. And secondly, we heard from researchers that filling in online forms may lead to data entry errors, which could be avoided if tables in PDF format were outputted directly from the statistical software used for the study. So again, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to post your results by providing this flexibility. So to try and bring this all together and draw some conclusions, study registration and study transparency isn't optional, it's an ethical imperative and is good science. For too long, voluntary compliance hasn't been enough. That's why legal requirements are now in place. At ISRCTN, our strategy is to make meeting those requirements as painless as possible. We're actively investing in our systems to reduce friction, improve usability, and help you do the right thing. And our plain language summary capabilities will help you connect your research with the people it was designed to help. And just a final thought that I thought I'd leave you with. There are kind of two mindsets when it comes to study registration. One is the compliance mindset, and of course you need to be compliant, but often the mindset here is, what's the minimum I need to do to tick this box? What can I get away with? The other is a transparency mindset. How can I make sure my work is visible, accessible, and useful to others? The compliance mindset sees registration as a burden. The transparency mindset sees it as a professional responsibility and as an opportunity. I see a lot of questions, particularly around scope, and particularly around scope of the new regulation. Is this study with this particular design in scope or out of scope? For those sort of questions, I urge you to think of the fundamentals. What the risk of publication bias and what that means for science and patient care. The need to respect patients who participate in the study, the opportunity to engage patients in the broader community. So, my message is, when in doubt, disclose, be transparent. It's the right thing to do. And at ISRCTN, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you. You can follow us on LinkedIn to see our updates, and I hope you'll do that. I appreciate your time for listening to this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. So moving forward, as we know that the new regulation, these apply from 28th April 2026. HRA has defined 4 key areas. The second is reporting results, informing participants is the third one, and sharing data and tissues. So we would be talking about the first 3. We would not be talking in detail about the sharing tissues and data sharing, although I have briefly covered that what are the importance of data sharing and following UK GDPR. So the process for this research is that research application is submitted. This is reviewed and approved. Then once it is approved, before first trial participant is enrolled into the trial, so you have to register your research first. Protocol should be registered, and then the study would be conducted. And during the completion, up to the completion of the study, there may be certain amendments to the protocol. So these would keep happening, and the protocol would be updated accordingly. Once the trial ends, after that, we will have to report the research, study results. And the other aspect that Andrew has just talked about, that we have to inform research participants, and it is an ethical imperative. This is very, very important to do that. The third one is sharing data. So individual participant data can also be shared upon request. Now, what is changing? So as of now, the current status is that there is no legal binding. However, it is a good practice to register the trials and share results. So from 28th April 2026, the change is that all clinical trials for investigational medicinal products, these must be registered on a public or partner registry. because WHO has classified that what exactly is public registry or partner registry. These should be considered, and the trials should be registered prior to recruitment. So that is important. The second thing is a summary of results must be published within 12 months of end of the trial, and sponsors must offer to share the results with trial participants written in a manner that is understandable to laypersons. So this is similar to plain language summary requirement that is in EU, and industry has now experience with layperson summaries. There is another thing which we have to understand, that what are the offenses if we fail to comply with the requirement to register or publish a summary of results. That would be considered a new offense. However, failing to offer the shared summary results with relevant persons, this is not an offense. Which clinical trials are in scope? So all the trials that would be started on or after 28th April 2026, these are in scope. The trials that would be ongoing on 28th April 2026 that are not registered on a public or partner registry, these would also need to be registered within 3 months of the regulation implementation. So the date would be 27th July 2026, or before they recruit the fourth participants. So whichever is earlier. So either 90 days from 28th April 2026 or before they recruit the first participant. So your trials should be registered then. And it does not applies to trials ending before 28th April 2026. Now, Andrew has also talked about that why it is important to follow ISR CTN and clinicaltrials.gov. The reason mainly is because both of these registries also feed into Be Part of Research, an online service run by the National Institute of Health and Care Research. There are other registries which are also applicable. However, if these do not facilitate public access to information about trials in the UK, then the trial should be registered on ISR CTN as well. So, for example, the EU's CTIS, this is a primary registry. However, it does not facilitate public access to information about trials in the UK. Therefore, either sponsors should register their trial on clinicaltrials.gov or ISR CTN. Andrew has talked about this aspect that ISR CTN allows sponsors to fully register the trial or publish a minimal record if a trial has an agreed referral, publish a protocol-less summary, add a plain language summary of the clinical trial results and the format as well. So a summary of results must be published within 12 months of the end of the trial. This timeline applies to pediatric trials as well, which is slightly different from the EU requirements, which require pediatric trials to be released within 6 months. So here, pediatric as well as adult trials both have to be published within 12 months of the end of the trial. So there is no requirement for publishing any interim results, and the summary of results must be published in all public registries where the trial was registered. So apart from ISR CTN or clinicaltrials.gov, if the sponsor has registered clinical trial on any other platform as well, so they will have to release results there too, in addition to results released on ISR CTN or clinicaltrials.gov. So if the sponsor thinks that they would be releasing the results on their website and a link would be published on ISR CTN or CT.gov or any other platform, not CT.gov because it does not allow. So that would not be considered as compliance. So once a sponsor has published their summary results, they would inform HRA by emailing at the link given here. Then sharing lay summary results. Summary of the trial results must be provided to participants and or any other relevant people within 12 months of end of the trial. So apart from the scientific summary of results that are released, we will have to provide lay summary of results as well. So apart from participants, other relevant people as well, which are defined on the slide later. Application for ethics approval will need to include information about how the results would be offered, how the results would be disseminated. So when the protocol would be prepared, at that time, at the time of ethics approval, sponsor will have to provide this information as well, that how they would be sharing lay summary results with the participants or other relevant people. So other relevant people are important if participants lack sufficient mental capacity. So they can be a parent or legal representative where the participant is under 16 years of age, the legal representative who provided consent on behalf of an adult lacking capacity, or if a child who participated in a clinical trial reaches the age of 16 by the time the summary results is provided, both the participant and the person who originally provided consent, they should receive the results, or they should be offered to receive the results. And if the participant has lost the capacity to provide consent after the start of the trial or has died, then the participant's caretaker, person involved in welfare of the participant, or next of the kin, they should receive the results. For the ongoing trials, it is not needed to offer a plain language summary with the relevant persons. SRA has clarified that they do not have to proactively look for relevant people if they have not been able to share the results with them. So they do not have sponsors do not have to look for relevant people specifically. Now, deferrals and waivers have also been defined in the regulation. So deferral requests must be made before the deadline of the specific transparency requirement. It would be agreed specifically to protect commercially confidential information. If the trial is phase 1 and involves healthy volunteers, then it will automatically receive a deferral for 30 months due to commercial sensitivity. And deferral may be granted for up to 30 months from the end of the trial defined within the clinical trial protocol. So sponsor can also request for extending the deferral, that is a maximum of 10 years from the end of the trial. But this application for extending the deferral should be made before the end of the deferral period that is effective at present. So they should be considering that before the deferral period ends, they should apply for deferral again if they require to. So before end of the deferral period. A waiver would be granted only in rare cases, in exceptional circumstances, for example, for reasons of national security or national defense. So, apart from that, if any trial is being taken up by under the direct supervision of defense forces or any other organization of national capacity, so in that case only, for defense of the country, there would not be any waiver granted. Apart from that, no waiver should be granted for any other trial. In case of any deferral or waiver, the sponsor should publish a minimum record on a publicly accessible registry. So here there are certain elements mentioned which should be covered under a minimal record. So registry number, IRS, ID, which should be mentioned, principal investigator name, sponsor name, ethics committee decision and date of decision, and other aspects which are important for the public to know. In terms of sharing the data, so data handling must comply with UK General Data Protection Regulation and Data Protection Act 2018. And sponsors should take explicit consent from the participant for sharing their data and how the data would be analyzed. In addition, they should also collect only necessary and proportionate data that is justified for research purposes. Apart from that, they should not be keeping or collecting the data. Robust information governance measures should be in place. So roles and responsibilities should be well defined, that who would be sharing the data, how the data would be shared. All these things should be very well defined in the governance structure. Individual participant level data should normally be shared provided it is anonymized. So this is in line with other regulations for data sharing. So there is a consensus there that how the anonymized data should be shared and why it is important to share the data. So that is all from me. We will take up the questions now. I'll stop sharing my screen. Okay. So, Till and Andrew, if you can come onto the video. Thank you. Okay. So we have received some questions live, and some of the attendees had already shared their questions. So I'll share the first question. I think a couple of questions you have already answered till I just see there. Okay. So Andrew, the first question is for you, that how would ISR CTN ensure quality of the information submitted? So as clinicaltrials.gov has NIS reviewers who look for the results as well as protocol, they review that, provide comments if there are any inconsistencies. So how would it be done for ISR CTN?
So obviously for the protocol, so I'm getting a lot of feedback. For the protocol summary, we've already got established processes and systems. The team at PMC review all the submissions and ensure quality standards are met. As I said in the presentation, results is a completely different beast. At clinicaltrials.gov, they've got double the size of the people, double the team on the results side compared to the protocol side to review submissions. We are not as well funded as clinicaltrials.gov. We haven't got the resources to do that. So our solution to that is to use a lot of online checking, rules-based checking to make sure fields are completed, and using AI to review the submissions. There will also be some manual checking to make sure things like, for example, all the outcome measures are accounted for in the results submission compared to the protocol submission. But we won't be doing in-depth analysis of the statistics and the numbers that are presented. We're putting the onus very much on the researcher to make sure that they've submitted accurate and complete data. And we're very clear on the system that they maintain responsibility for that. It's not our job to make sure they are being accurate and complete.
Thank you. And another question we have received is, if a sponsor registers phase 1 to 4 studies in clinicaltrials.gov and the new guidelines permit the use of clinicaltrials.gov, under what specific condition would this not be applicable? Because the regulation says, although both registries meet the criteria of being a public registry, unless there is a US FDA requirement to register with clinicaltrials.gov, sponsors should register with ISR CTN.
So yeah, I think the question was, can I continue to register my studies on clinicaltrials.gov like I do today? You can. That's clinicaltrials.gov meets the WHO requirement in the regulations. As I tried to summarize in my presentation, doing that carries some risk that you should be aware of. And that risk, which I highlighted, was around results summaries not being made public in time to meet the UK regulation, because they won't be processed in the priority processing list. There'll be UK studies will be towards the bottom compared with the US study. So you run that risk. It's entirely the sponsor's choice, but I wanted to highlight the risk that you run by doing that.
I'll just add to that, again, that as far as I'm aware, the average delay with clinicaltrials.gov for reviews of those types of studies is currently around 6 months. So you will really struggle to meet a 12-month reporting timeline. You'd have to do it 6 months after trial end, and even then it's not reliable. You see things like the US government shutdown recently. I wouldn't place my bets on it.
Mm-hmm. And if there is no specific requirement, yet clinicaltrials.gov remains acceptable, what are the consequences if sponsors choose only ct.gov, not ISR CTN at all?
I think we just kind of answered that. I think there are other things to factor in as well. In particular, if you choose ISR CTN, obviously I'm biased on the chair of ISR CTN, but if you choose ISR CTN, you've got further opportunities to engage patients, to engage the broader community with your research by utilising plain language summaries. So not only is there a regulatory risk, but I believe there's more opportunity by using ISRCTN. And as I said in my presentation, we're trying to make it easy for you. We're not trying to make this burdensome. By its inherent nature, it has some difficulties, but we're trying to make it as easy as possible because we believe transparent as a registry, making it easy helps transparency. So that's what I was trying to say in my presentation, that we're trying to make it easy, and that's why you should come to ISRCTN.
Okay, okay. And then one question we have received in chat. Applications submitted before 28th April 2026 and the trial ends on or after 28th April 2026. Are results for phase 1 healthy volunteer required to be published, as they were only required to be made available to MHRA in the past but not published? That is one part of the question. So, Andrew, if you would like to take that, then I will ask the second part.
So if I understand the question, if you've got a study that's ongoing at the time the regulation becomes effective, do you have to post results to the same registry that you're at? And I think the answer, but I'm not the regulator, let me just say, I think the answer to that is yes, you do have to post results, but I'm not the regulator, I don't know the regulations but completely, but I think the answer is yes, you have to post results.
And this is phase 1 healthy volunteer. If this is phase 1 healthy volunteer, so is there anything, because for phase 1 healthy volunteer studies, now the regulation says that they can be automatically deferred to, right? So for 30 months, sponsor can defer these publishing of results.
I think that's a brilliant question. I'll go to HRA with that question.
Okay, sure. And then other part of the question is, are pediatric trials results or required to be submitted within 12 months, or the sponsor have to follow the old regulation to submit results within 6 months? I think this specific question is, again, probably the trial is ongoing when the new regulation would be in place. So if the trial is ongoing at that time, whether the sponsor should be following the old regulation or new regulation would be applicable here.
Yeah, if you want me to answer that, I mean, I'm not your compliance guy, right? These are very good questions, don't get me wrong, but I think the right place to go to get definitive answers is HRA. I don't want to give a view on this webinar and that be the view that people take forward, because it may well be very wrong. So I will decline to comment on those very complex compliance questions.
So based on my understanding, while I was preparing this presentation and was reading the regulation, so because any trial that is ongoing after the regulation is in place, I mean after 28th April 2026, so the new regulation would apply to that. So for this particular situation, my opinion is that sponsor can post results after 12 months of the trial completion rather than 6 months.
If I can just jump in on this, in my experience,
Sure.
the HRA is very responsive. So if you have questions like that, you email the HRA with that questions, you should be getting an answer very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew, there is one question for you. What are the timelines to release the PLS capability functionality? I think you have answered that one.
Yeah, I mean, that functionality is embedded within the results system that we're developing.
Yes.
Like in the IT system, it's got some unknowns with regard to the timelines, but we're aiming to put that all together with the results system when it gets launched. Yeah.
So when participants registered for this webinar, I'll go back to those questions. Till there is one question, if you can take that up. How do UK changes compare with EU CTR and global harmonization efforts? Although you have briefly talked about it.
Can you repeat the question, please?
How do UK changes compare with EU CTR and global harmonization efforts?
I think there's a very good overlap there in the sense that, you've got a reporting time frame of 12 months. And also in future, all trials will have to be registered before recruitment of the first participant. So right now you have 42 days still. That's going to be aligned for all clinical trials that you have to register before recruitment of the first participant. And I think that's one really positive development that we're seeing in this space, that everyone is converging around the same basic rules. The details might vary, but the basic rules are the same. And I know that there was like a deliberate attempt in the UK to try and harmonise with EU and other rules as much as they could.
Okay. Andrew, one question to you again. What support will be provided to sponsors for creating patient-friendly summaries? So, for plain language summaries, what support will be provided to sponsors?
So there is already guidance, I believe, on the HRA website around providing plain language summaries of results. Again, we need to be careful as a registry around what we can commit to in terms of review of those documents. Again, I believe the onus should be on the registrant to make sure that they are following the guidance and that those plain language summaries are indeed plain language. And I'm sure Till and others like him will be looking and calling registrants to account if they're not. We will have a pretty light touch on those, I believe, going forward. Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. Till, this question is for you. What are the sponsors' responsibility when a trial is outsourced?
Well, I think legislation covers that. Who is the responsible party? I think if you're a sponsor, though, what you always have to keep in mind is if you outsource it, the ultimate responsibility, the buck stops with you. Even if it doesn't in a legal way, it does in terms of reputational risk. So, if you outsource, make sure to keep on top of the process and make sure that the rules are being followed.
And I think because this ICH GCP R6 also says quite a lot on data collection, data parameters, and data governance. So considering that also, whatever responsibilities sponsors have, these are very specific to data governance structure as well. So I think sponsor will have to bear those responsibility, even if these are outsourced to third party. Okay. And Till, do you see any challenges involved and roadmap ahead? And Andrew, you can add your perspective as well.
Sorry, I missed that. I was trying to answer some questions on the chat. Sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, I think the UK is really a best case scenario because it's pretty straightforward. You have a very responsive regulator, you have a very responsive ethics regulator, the HRA, and you have a very responsive registry. So I think the bigger challenges ahead are going to be when the European registry CETIS, when they introduce structured results reporting. But I think in the UK, you really have an ecosystem where the players, they know each other, they talk with each other, and they all share this commitment to making transparency as easy as possible.
Okay. So we are dot on time. I think we can close here. So thank you everyone for joining in. Sorry for the technical challenges I had, but I think probably we made it in the end finally. So thank you everyone for joining in. Please post your question. The webinar details have one specific field for feedback as well. So please add your feedback. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Thank you so much once again for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.